them bearing the shields, and afterwards they returned them to the guardroom. Verse 12, because Rehoboam humbled himself, the Lord's anger turned from him, and he was not totally destroyed. Indeed, there was some good in Judah. Because Rehoboam humbled himself. Look, bottom of your outline. When we choose humility, God restores. When we choose humility, God restores. He restores the relationship. God convicts you of sin in your life. You humble yourself before God. You choose humility. And God promises that every time you do that, you choose humility, He restores. God's not like, you know what? Too much sin. It was cool until you hit the sin level like this high. But now that last one, like now you're over. And so no more restoration for you. That's not what God does. Now it's not too much of the same sin. He's not like too much of the same sin. It happens too often. Too much of the same, too often, too big, too embarrassing, too shameful, too devastating, too humbling, too humiliating. None of that. That's not what God says. You know what God says? God says this: grace wins every single time. Grace wins every single time when you humble yourself. I give you that which you don't deserve. I offer you a free gift. I place before you something that you cannot earn, that you have no hope of ever attaining on your own. Grace wins every single time. Because listen to me. This morning, God says to you, you ready? This is what God says to you this morning. No matter how many times you messed up, no matter how many times you did it, no matter how many people you hurt, no matter how much of your life is taken over by it, no matter how much of shame is like tucked away in the dark corners of your heart, no matter how many bad decisions you've made, no matter how many blessings you've messed up, no matter how many relationships you've jumbled and mixed up and can't even define anymore, no matter how far you've fallen, like you need to know this morning that when you humble yourself, restoration and forgiveness are yours, carte blanche, no questions asked. When you humble yourself. That's what happens with Rehoboam when you humble yourself. Restoration and forgiveness are yours. God says, I redeem you, I call you by name. Child, you are mine. Grace wins every single time. A couple weeks ago, I had a meeting with the Haas's, so I was in the Haas's neighborhood, Naperville neighborhood. Not that matters, but anyway. So I was like 5 minutes early, so I just drove around the block because, I don't know, I could have just shown up. But anyway, there's like a huge, like down the block from their house, there's like this huge flat screen TV somebody had thrown out. And I was like, money. So I was like, all right, cool. Like, I know the guy to take it to fix the TV. I was like, it's probably going to be like a bulb. It's going to be like $150, and I'm going to have myself a sweet flat screen TV, right? So I throw it in the back of the Explorer, go to the meeting next day, take it to the electronics store. He's like, I'll get back to you in a week. He calls me in a week. He's like, $800. I'm like, oh, so close. I was so close to the flat screen. Well, what did I do, though? He's like, $800 to restore the thing. You know what I said? Keep it. Because for $800, I can go to the store and get a brand new one, right? Like I wasn't willing to pay the price to restore the TV. I wasn't willing to pay the restoration price. You know what? God's willing to pay your restoration price. God's willing to pay the price for you to be restored. God's like, my blood for your blood. My life for your life. My death for your death. My humiliation for your humiliation. My beating, my being humbled for your being beaten, your being humbled. Like, I will pay your restoration price when you humble yourself. That's what God says. Because don't ever forget, and you can write this down if you want, that when I choose humility, God chooses restoration. Every single time. Second one, God relents. All right, God restores, God relents. When you choose humility, God relents. Look what happens in the section of Scripture. God kind of softens it. He's like, you will not be completely destroyed, but you will go into slavery. All right? God's plan going into the thing was you're done. Like you are going to be completely destroyed, wiped out, done. Coming out of it after humility, God says, you will not be destroyed, but you will be enslaved to the Egyptian people for a while. God kind of holds back. He kind of relents. He kind of softens the blow. It's like what you deserve by your actions, you're not going to get. All right? What you have earned, I'm going to withhold a little bit of it. What I should be giving you, I'm not going to give you. God relents. I don't know if you want to think about it this way, but it might be more complicated than not. I mean, in some ways, God changes his mind. You don't take it too far, but when you're humble, God kind of relents. He softens. He backs up. He backs off. Because when you choose humility, listen to this. When you choose humility, it will never be as bad as it could have been. When you choose humility, it will never be as bad as it could have been. All right? Because some of you, and I mean, even me, I used to have this picture about God that's always chasing me around, looking to beat me down with a stick. Like every little thing I did, every single thing, like God was there, like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do this, don't do this, you should do this, you should do that. Like God is just hounding you. He's after you. Like some of you have that picture of God like the eye in the sky that never relents, like the Zoran eye, you know, that sees all in the Lord of the Rings. Like that's like your picture, like my picture of God was that too. Like he's always after you. And what you need to know, like when you choose humility, God relents. Like God does see all, but he sees all so he can be in relationship with you, not so that he can beat you up over every little single thing. God relents. God backs off. When we choose humility, God chooses to relent. I want to clarify something though. It doesn't mean that he removes all of your consequences, okay? This is very important. God does not remove all of your consequences. It does mean God will remove some of your consequences, okay? God does not remove all of your consequences, but God may remove or God will remove some of your consequences. Why? Can we look at verse 8? Really quickly. I don't want this to be a tangent, but I think it's necessary to talk about it at least. Verse 8, they will, however, become subject to him so that. Why? So that. Why will it happen? Why will you go into slavery? Why will you have some consequences? Why will you experience consequences to your sin? Why won't God remove all of your consequences when you're humble? Why? It's right here. Why? They may learn the difference between serving me and serving the kings of other lands, so that you may know, that you may experience, that you may have tangible evidence, so that you may experience in your life situation, life circumstance, how it is different, why it is different, what it looks like when it's different, when you serve God and when you serve God's little g. That's why God lets consequences remain, so that you know how perfect and pleasing and joyful and peaceful it is to serve a living God as opposed to little small g gods. That's why he will not remove all of your consequences. But he may remove some, because God relents. He shows mercy and he shows grace. He restores, he relents. This one personally, the next one is my favorite, all right? I don't know why you're saying like, whatever, I'm coming back, hold on. All right? Number 3. What is this? Wait, it's a what? Recycling can, all right? God reuses, all right? I personally love this one because not only does God forgive you from your sin, say, child, you are mine. Like, I will restore the relationship with you, and I will go through your consequences with you. But here's what God could do. He's like, you know what? You've screwed it up. There's a closet over there. Why don't you just go sit in the closet for the rest of your life, and then, like, we'll work it out. Or here's the bench. Why don't you just sit the bench for the rest of the game because you've totally messed the whole thing up now, and like just sit the bench. Like I think as a sinful, wicked person, me personally, like God would be completely just in saying, you sinned, sit the bench, see you in heaven, eternity, that whole thing will work it out, right? But that's not what God does. God says, I'm going to reuse you. I'm going to continue to use you. I'm going to, I shouldn't say that, all right? I'm going to say God is like, I'm not going to say it, didn't I? What am I doing? Like, he loves to recycle. Like, he loves to take you and your brokenness and your humility, and he likes to restore you and to relent and to reuse you again. And he loves that recycle process. Like, okay, I think I figured out why I like it so much, all right? Here it is, all right. I love my grandparents. They listen to these things, so I have to be careful what I'm about to say, all right? So thank you for paying my way through seminary, Grandma and Grandpa. All right. Now, with that, let's do this. My grandparents wash their tinfoil and fold it and put it back in the drawer. I ball my tinfoil up and shoot it in the basket and see how many times I can score. Like that. Sometimes, don't tell my wife, she's here, darn it. Sometimes I take tinfoil and like ball it up without using it and shoot it in the basket just to score. Like, that's what I do with tinfoil. That's what my grandparents do with tinfoil. My grandparents wash the Ziploc bags and they hang them over the silverware and they reuse it. Like, I put my sandwich in the Ziploc bag. I decide I don't want it to be in the Ziploc bag. I throw it away because it has crumbs in it. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm not washing the Ziploc bag. It's $2 for a new 100 count, Grandma. Like, it doesn't make sense. My grandparents, they like these shirts, all your shirts, your jeans, like they come with buttons. I'm like, why would you give me a button? Because if my button breaks, I'm going to buy a new shirt, baby. Like, my grandparents, they sew it back on. Doesn't matter if it's the same color button. Doesn't matter, like same size button. Doesn't matter. They sew their zippers on, their buttons on. Like, pants break, they reuse it. They sew it all back up. Right? That's my grandparents. You know what I love the fact